Good day. This is Russell Hawley coming to you from the Tate Geological Museum at Casper College. And today I'm going to talk just a little bit about an intrinsic property of minerals called fracture. That'll help you tell different kinds of minerals apart. Fracture is simply a description of what happens when you hit the mineral with a hammer and break it, because they break in different ways. Some of them just crumble into dust, and they're said to have an earthy fracture. However, there's others that break into fragments that are shaped like toothpicks. This is kyanite, and it's a good example of a mineral that does just that. And that is called the splintery fracture. So that can identify several different kinds of minerals, and kyanite is among them. A quick note here. Before you go wailing on the outcrop with a hammer, always consider safety first and make sure that you've got protective goggles. Many minerals will break into tiny, sharp fragments, and if those come speeding at your eye, it can do a lot of permanent damage. So be sure to invest in a pair of safety goggles before you go and test out fracture. Now, another kind of fracture that's quite important is exemplified in this stuff. Do you know what this is? Can you tell? Anybody? Yeah, those of you who are saying obsidian are correct. And it's a good example of the conchoidal fracture. By the way, obsidian actually isn't considered a true mineral because it has no crystal structure. So it's considered either a rock, or sometimes it's called a mineraloid. But whatever you consider it, it is certainly a good example of the conchoidal fracture. And conchoidal means shaped like a seashell. And if you look at the shape of this break there, with a little bit of imagination, it does have a bit of a seashell quality to it. Now, conchoidal fracture is very useful for people who are thinking of making these things. Yep, that's an arrowhead. And if you can think of any mineral that's used to make arrowheads or spear points or any sort of cutting tool or weapon, it's one that has the conchoidal fracture. Because if you break a piece of obsidian and create a conchoidal fracture and then turn it over and break it again, the place where those two fractures meet can be as sharp when it's fresh as a surgical scalpel. And indeed, people have been using obsidian to make arrowheads, and before that, spear points and hand axes for hundreds of thousands of years.